Good morning. We are up to the Gemara Yevamos, Daf Hashavua, the Mishnah. Fresh start of Mishnah, although it continues in the discussion about the mitzvah of Pru'avu. And so we're on Samach Daled Amud Aleph 64a, the Mishnah towards the top of the page, the only Mishnah on the page. Nasa Isha, if a man marries a woman, V'shayima Eser Shanim, and stays with her and is married to her for 10 years, V'lo Yalda, and during that time she did not bear children. And Rashali Bato. The Mishnah. Let's start a Mishnah, although continuing the discussion about the mitzvah of Pru'avu. So we're on so we know this from the story of Avram and Sarah. And Rashali Bato. Right, he can't, he's not permitted to continue to abstain to negate the mitzvah of Pru'avu. So he needs to marry someone else and or divorce her. Gersha. If he does divorce her, she's permitted to marry another man. Rashi says even if that man hasn't fulfilled his obligation. Remember, when we think about infertility back then, it was not entirely clear. Was there a problem with him? Was there a problem with her? So she can marry someone else. And the second man who marries her can also wait 10 years before to see if she can have children with him. If the woman at any time became pregnant and miscarried, then it's clear that she can conceive. And therefore, the 10-year clock about whether or not they can have children together restarts from the time of the miscarriage. Okay, the Gemara says, Tan Rabbanan, Nasa Isha, if a man married a woman, V'shayim Eser Shanim, Yalda, Yotzi v'eating suba, right? So not only if he divorces her after 10 years without children, he owes her the ksuba. Shema lo zachal libanos mimena. Perhaps he did not merit that he would build a family through his first wife, right? Right? Maybe the problem's with him, not with her. There's no proof text, but there's a hint to this. After 10 years, Avram lived in the location, right? Sarai at that time gave Hagar to Avram as a second wife. The Brisa says you learned something else here, right? Because it was only after Avram lived in Canaan for 10 years. When we talk about 10 years of infertility, it's 10 years in Eretz Yisrael. The years that Avram and Sarai spent in Chutz La'aretz did not count towards this halacha. If the husband gets sick, or shachal or the wife gets sick, or they're both in prison, right, not with each other, that also doesn't count towards the 10-year time frame. So Gemara asks, Rava, about 2/3 of the way down on the page. First word is on the line. Amalei Rava Rav Nachman, L'leilef mi Yitzchak. Let's learn from Yitzchak, not 10 years, but 20 years. Yitzchak ben 40 shana b'kach to Rivka. Yitzchak ben 60 shana b'ledet osam. Yitzchak was, let's not go into how old Rivka was. Yitzchak was 40 when he marries Rivka, and Yitzchak 60 when Rivka has children. So why don't we learn from there? So Malay, Rav Nachman said to Rabbi, Yitzchak akur haya. Yitzchak was infertile, was an akar, couldn't have children, infertile. Therefore, the problem was with him. So therefore, there was no need to. There was an exception. There was no need to divorce after 10 years because finding another wife wouldn't have helped. He needed to daven so that he would be healed. Yahachi Avram Nami Yakorhaya. Avram was also sterile, right? There's actually a medrash that talks about that. So why would you learn from there? So in Achanami, so we say the pasuk by Yitzchak, Kahumi by like Rav Baraba. We learned something different from the pasuk by Yitzchak. Damar Chia Baraba, Rabbi Yochanan, Lama Nimnu Shnoso Shal Yishmael. Right? Why does the Torah tell us the years of Yishmael? Kedei Yachis B'hem Shnoso Shal Yaakov. Right? So it's all part of the system of chronology within Avram's family to make these milestones known as a way of tracking the chronology of Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov. Amar Yitzchak. Yitzchak Avinu, Akor Haya. Yitzchak Avinu was infertile. Shnamar, Yitzchak LaHashem Lenochach Ishtel. Famously, Yitzchak davened opposite his wife. Al Ishtel Nemar doesn't say for his wife. El Lenochach, opposite his wife. Right, so there was a similarity in their statuses. They were both infertile. Yahachi, if that's so, Vayaya Terlo. Why does it say that Hashem listened to Yitzchak? I tell everybody, right? If they both had needed healing, if they both were infertile, the answer to their prayers was that both of them were healed. Why does it only say one? So if Yishena Doma, so this famously, Rashi, I think, quotes this. If Yishena Doma Tvilas Tzadik Ben Rash Tzadik, Tvilas Tzadik Ben Rasha. There's something qualitatively better about Yitzchak's prayer. That's why Hashem answers Yitzchak's prayer. And that qualitative benefit was that Yitzchak is a Tzadik Ben Tzadik, and Rivka is a Tzadik Ben Rasha. So Rabbi Yitzchak, last in line. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, Mivnei Ma Hayu Avotinu Akurim. Why were our forefathers and foremothers infertile? God wants them to pray. God desires our prayers. God wants us to turn to Him in times of difficulty in prayer. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, why is it compared to like a pitchfork, right? Just as a pitchfork turns the grain over, right? You move it for the hay from one place to another with a pitchfork. So too, tefillah has the power to change God's disposition, approach towards a person from one of strictness to one of mercy. So here, a little more Gadata. We deserve it after some of these Gemaras, the complexity. Ramami says, Avram and Sarah, Tumtum Hayu. Avram and Sarah were both in the category of Tumtum. Right? Tumtum is where from the outward perspective, it's the gender of the individual is somewhat ambiguous. Shnamar Habitu El Sur. Pasuk says, look to the rock. Chutzavtem, top of Samachtalat on the base. Chutzavtem vel makavetz bor nukartem. Look to the rock which you have chiseled out, and at the hollow of the pit from which you were dug. Ksiv Habitu El Avram Avichem El Sarah Tafolech. So in the next verse, look to Avram and Sarah. Right, so they're like hewn rock, pit. Right, there was nothing that could come forth from them. They're like just as barren as rocks. Amar Nachman, Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Rav Havua. Right, Sarah Menu islandess Haisa. Sarah was an islandess, right? Someone who can't have children. Shnemati Sarai Akara in Lavlad. Right, she was barren. She had no child. So few base she didn't have a uterus. right? Ein lo vlad, ein lo beis vlad, right? It wasn't only that she didn't have children; it was that anatomically she was missing the necessary organs to carry a child. Okay, we go back to the 10-year time frame. I'm review the Bray, der Shmuel. 5 lines from the top. Bray der Shmuel Bashilis V'Shvei the Rav Lo Shanu Ela B'Doros Rishonim. This 10-year time frame is only for earlier generations. Sheshno Sam Rubos. He lived a long time, so 10 years was an appropriate amount of time to wait. Aval B'Doros Achronim, but later generations Sheshno Sam Muatos. Lifespan is so short. Shtei Shanu Machza, 2.5 years. That's all. After 2.5 years, this kicks in. Kegei Shloshi Burim, 3 full pregnancies, right? Plus 3 months, right? So 9 times 3, right? 2.5 years is 30 months. 3 pregnancies is 27 months plus another 3 months. Rava Amar Rav Nachman Shalosh Shanim. You give 3 years. Kegei Shalosh Kidos, corresponding to the 3 people who are remembered. 3 remembrances. We mentioned this on Rosh Hashanah, Damar Mar, Rosh Hashanah, Nifkidu, Sarah, Rachel, V'chana. Appropriate for us to learn this weeks before Rosh Hashanah. On Rosh Hashanah, Sarah was remembered for children, so was Rachel, and so was Chana. Rabbah, listen to Lahani Klali. This whole thing, these all rules, listen to Lani Klali. These rules that you mentioned about 2.5 years, 3 years, we don't have it. We only have 10 years. That's the only metric that we have about waiting. Mechti, Masisin Man Takin, who established our Mishnah? Rebbe, like Rebbe. Rabbi Mei David Imaut Shnei. Already in the days of King David, lifespan had reduced. Right? So the lifespan in King David's time was 70 years, plus or minus. Lifespan in our time, it hasn't changed all that much, plus or minus. And so therefore, the time frame we talk about is 10 years. It's not 2.5 years. The Gemara continues. Right, the statement in the Brisa says maybe it was as a result of his lack of merit that he was unable to have children through her, and therefore he divorces her with a ksuba and she can marry someone else. How do we know it's his fault? His lack of merit? Maybe it was her lack of merit. If it was a problem with her, the implication is that maybe she should not receive her ksuba. So the Gemara continues. Second wide line, end of the line. Ihi, Kevin Delom Mapakta, Pirivarivia, Lomiansha. No, you can't look at it from that perspective because the mitzvah of Pruvavu is not on her. We talked about this in the past. The mitzvah of Pruvavu is only on him. Obviously, it can't be done without her, but she's not technically obligated. Different reasons are associated with it. The one that I often quote is that it's a sakana for women to have children, right? It's a precarious situation. Therefore, they can't be obligated in the mitzvah of Pruvavu, even though they are fundamentally necessary in order for the mitzvah of Pruvavu to be fulfilled. So she's not, is this so? Marry a wife and have children, right? So the rabbi said this to Rabbi Abba, marry a woman and have children. And he said back, Izakai Havli Makamaisa. Had I merited to have children, I would have had children from my first wife, right? And he doesn't think that it's any more reason for the second one to to be any better than the first. Doesn't that contradict what we said, that after 10 years, let him divorce her and marry someone else? Or Rabbi Abba said, if I'm not meriting to have children, it's not going to pay. It's not going to be any better with the second wife. So the Gemara says, no, that case is different. Hasam dachu kamad chilul rabbanan. He's just pushing them off. He doesn't want to talk to them. He's not giving them a real answer. Rabbi Rav Bar Zavda became sterile as a result of Rav Huna's lectures. We had this before. He would sit so long, he would hold in, he had to go to the bathroom, hold it in, and that caused him to be the problem. And therefore, he knew the problem was with him. Therefore, taking another wife wasn't going to help his chances at Puravu. Rav Gidel, Yaakov Miparkid Rav Huna. Rav Gidel also had problems because of the length of Rav Huna's shiurim. And for some reason, they would not get up to miss anything, and that was dangerous. You're not supposed to hold it in. Rav Chelbo, Yaakov Miparkid Rav Huna. Rav Chelbo also had this problem. Shishu Yaakov Miparkid Rav Huna. A number of rabbis had this problem. We mentioned 3 here. Rav Acha Bar Yaakov, Achade Suskinta. Rav Acha Bar Yaakov was afflicted with suskinta. Suskinta. Right, similar the ailment you get from not going to the bathroom when you have to. So to help him, they suspended him. They removed him from his spot in the base medrash. And he was healed. In other words, they required him to leave the base medrash, which allowed him to function more normally. We got to find the proper balance of spiritual sustenance and physical health. Amar Rav Acha Bar Yaakov, Shisin Sabi Havina. We were a group of 60 scholars, says Rav Acha Bar Yaakov, Kulu Yakor, Pirkei Rav Huna Bar Mina. And all of them became sterile except for me. Because I live by the mantra, wisdom preserves the life of its possessor. Right? So he made sure not to right. So he made sure not to fall victim to what all of the other people did in Rav Huna's shir. Gemara continues 2 dots, 8 lines or so after it gets fine. Gershom Muteris, if he divorces her after 10 years, she's permitted to marry another man. Shani in. A second man she's allowed to marry, Shlishi lo, but if 10 years pass and she's still no children from her, then a third man is not allowed to marry her. Masisi money. Who is this like? Rebbe, Tanya, we learned in the Brisa, Mal Arishon Omes. This is about baby boys who have a negative adverse reaction to bris milah and die. You do bris milah on one child and he dies. Sheni Umesh Shlishi Lo Tamo. Right after 2, we already create some sort of chazaka. You don't have to wait for the third baby to die to create the chazaka. 2 is enough. 1 isn't, but 2 is. Divrei Rebbe, Shimon Gamliel, Shlishi Tamo, or Vilo Tamo. Shimon Gamliel says we say chazaka is after 3, so 3 children have to die first before you say that's enough of those children. Matani Ibcha. We learned that there's another brisa that has these opinions attributed the other way around. Which of these brises was taught later? Whichever was later, that's the one that's authoritative in terms of which opinion holds by what. So we'll see. So we're gonna clarify who is the correct holder of which opinion. Tashma. There was a story of 4 sisters who lived in Tzipori. Shemal Rishona Umes. One sister had a baby, circumcised to the baby, and the baby unfortunately died. She Umes. Happened to a second sister, the same thing. Shlishi Umes. The third sister, Vias. Only after the third baby died did the Rosh Gamliel say, don't do it. So Rosh Gamliel, we had it right the first time. Rabbi says after 2 is a chazak already, and Rosh Gamliel is the one who says only after 3. Yeah, but you can only answer what someone asks you. Maybe if the third sister came along, Rosh Gamliel would have also said at that point it was enough of a chazak. Okay, My Isadu say to Rabbi Chia bar Abba. Why would Chia bar Abba bring this as a proof to anything? The Dilma Hakamash. Maybe we learned something else. Know that not only is it the children of one woman, but the children of different siblings who all have the same DNA, that also creates a chazaka, right? On that point, Amarava, Rava says, Hashta Damar Tachayos V'Chaskos. Once you say the possibility here in Shimon Gamliel that different sisters create a chazaka of a circumstance, therefore, L'isa Adam Isha Lomi Mishpachas Nichvin. A person should not marry a woman from a family who has nichvin, epilepsy, lo mishpachas u'tzorayim, family of lepers, right? Because it runs in the family. Vadis chazki klasa zimni, budis chazik klasa zimni. This is only where there was three family members, right? One family member should not be a problem for the shidduch. If there's three in the same family, then it's something to look into. So what's the deal? What do we learn from who holds what when it comes to chazaka? Kesher Yitzchak bar Yosef Amar, Yitzchak bar Yitzchak came from Eretz Yisrael. He said, Uvda Havi Kamei, the Rav Yochanan B'Kisha Demon. Something happened in the shul in Ma'on, Biyom HaKippurim Shechol Yos V'Shabbos. It was once Yom Kippur fell on Shabbos, right? Sometimes happens, not this year. Mola Rishon Umeis. One sister had her son circumcised. He died. Shnio Mace. Shlishis Ba Lefanav. The second sister also had a baby who died. The third sister came, I guess, on Shabbos Yom Kippur before Rav Yochanan asked him, Amrullah L'chiyumoli, said, go and circumcise. There's no chazaka. According to Rav Yochanan, right, 2 is not enough. It has to be 3. And Rabbi Yochanan is the one that quoted Rishon Gamliel. So it must be Rishon Gamliel holds that the chazaka is only after 3. Abaye says Chazeh Kasharis Isura V'Sakanta. You are permitting to a woman to violate a biblical prohibition and to expose her son to danger. Right? Make sure that you're comfortable with that, right? Because Rebbe holds after 2, right? So the third baby should never undergo circumcision. Here we're saying that was the case of Rabbi Yochanan and Rosh Hashanah. Samachal Abaye. Abaye relied upon this report. So it requires that 3 creates the chazaka of Azal Nasba Lachoma. He married a woman named Choma. She's the daughter of Isi, son of Yitzchak, son of Rav Yehuda. The Nasba Rachva, the Pumbedisa Shachit. This woman had previously married Rechava, a man who died. Rav Yitzchak the Rabba Bar Chana V'Shachit. This woman had also married Rav Yitzchak the Rabba, and he also died. The Nasba Hu V'Shachit. Abaye, right? Abaye who said, make sure that you're right, that 3 is what creates a chazaka, not 2. So he lived by that, and he married a woman who 2 of her husbands had died. And then, because it wasn't a chazaka, but unfortunately Abaye died. Right? So it seems like 2 should be a chazaka. So Rava said, Umika David Uvda Benavshe Kihai. Right? Look what Abaye did. He applied the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan or Shimon Gamliel to his own life, endangering his own life. Why would he do that? Va'iyu Damar. It was Abaye himself who said, Avin de Samcha. Avin's reports of Rabbi Yochanan's rulings are reliable. Samcha Yitzchak Sumka Lav Bar Samcha. Yitzchak Bar Yosef's reports are not reliable. Avin Yeshno B'Chazara. Avin is always reviewing the rulings. Yitzchak Sumka Eina B'Chazara. Yitzchak Bar Yosef does not review the rulings. Yeah. And yet Abaye relied on the ruling in a matter of life and death for himself and married a woman who two of her husbands already had died. Bod, Ema de Pligi. Which case can you say that Rebbe Rishon Gamliel disagree is only Lady in Mila? But Benisuin Mi Pligi, who says they argue with when it comes to marriage. Maybe even Rishon Gamliel will admit that after two cases of a woman whose husband dies, that would be enough for her to be a katlanis and therefore should not be married again. So the Gemara says, yeah, in. Right? No, that the machlokas, Tanayim, Ravi, and Rav Shimon Gamliel also applies to marriage. But Tanya, because we learned in the Brayso, Nises Larishan Umeis. So a woman marries her first husband and he dies. Lasheni Umeis, second husband dies. L'shlishi lo tinase. She can't get married a third time. That's Divrei Rebbe. Rav Shimon Gamliel Omer L'shlishi tinase. She may get married a third time, but L'Ravi lo tinase. But she can't get married a fourth time if three of her husbands die. Right, so Abaye, it was okay for Abaye to hold like Rav Shimon Gamliel because his opinion about what creates a chazaka goes through three. Only is created after the third. Bishlam Agavi Mila, it makes sense by Mila, right? Ika Mishpacha Derafe Dama. Right, there could be, right, the reason why it creates a chazaka is because, right, it's all in one family, it's all one DNA, and if after 2, 3, we see that there's something wrong with the DNA of this family, Ika Mishpacha Dekami Dama. Right, some blood is clots right, it doesn't clot right. Elodie suing my timer. What's this idea of a katlanis at all? It's different men from different families with different backgrounds, different DNAs. What's the logic in creating some sort of chazaka of connection between them, between the deaths of her husbands? Amarle Rav Mordechai Ravashi, Hachi Amarvimi Miagronim Mishmid Rav Huna, Mayan Gorem. Right? Mayan Gorem. That there's a problem, that she has some sort of disease that causes, that there's something wrong with her that causes these deaths. Rav Ashi Omar Mazel Gorem. There's nothing physically wrong, but she has a bad mazel. But there's some, her fate. But there's something that's attached to her, whether it's physical, whether it's more esoteric and spiritual. My benayu, what's the difference between these two opinions of Mayan and Mazel? So you benayu to irsu mes. The nafkamina is where a man who was engaged to her before there was any intimacy, any physical contact, dies. Right. So if the problem is Mazel, then that counts towards the problem with Mazel. If the problem is Mayan, we assume there's something wrong with her. Well, he was never in proximity, close enough contact with her for that to count as one. Or, right, where they're already married, but we know why he died, right? He died because he fell out of a tree, right? It's not some mysterious thing that we can attribute to some sort of disease that she transmitted to him, because we don't know why he died. But here he fell out of a tree, right? So he fell out of a tree. That's bad mazel. That counts towards the bad mazel. That shouldn't count towards the mayan problem. Okay, 5 lines from the bottom of Samach Talmud on the base. Amalei Rav Yosef Brei Derava L'Rava. Yosef, Rava said to his father, Pa'amine mi Rav Yosef. I once asked Rav Yosef, halacha karevi. Is halacha like Rabbi? V'amar li'en, right? So it's 2. 2 creates the chazaka. Halacha. Halacha Rav Shimon ben Gamliel, but then a different time I asked him, is it like Rav Shimon ben Gamliel? And he said, yes. Right? I thought he was messing with me, right? How could the halacha be like Rabbi and Rabbi Yochanan and Rav Shimon ben Gamliel? So Amar Leilo, no. So Rabbi explained to his son, no, he was being sincere. Stamehi upashidlach, right? Right, there are stams that go according to both. Sometimes, right? So there's no clear cut across the board. 2 creates a chazaka or 3 creates a chazaka. It depends, right? It explains Yisuin and Malkios Krevi. When it comes to marriage and Malkos, we hold like Rebbe that 2 creates achazaka, vestos v'shor amuad kosher v'gamliel. When it comes to a vestes, a set time for a woman to have her period. When it comes to taras mishpacha, v'shor amuad. When it comes to an ox that is a menace to society and needs to be stoned, that requires 3 instances, like kosher v'gamliel. Nisuin by marriage hadamaran, right? That after 2 marriages without children for 10 years each, then the woman can't marry a 3rd time. Malkios, what's the case of lashes? Diktan, when the Mishnah Mishalaka of Ashana, a person who had Malchus twice, Bezin Kontin Osalakipa. After that, any 3rd transgression, they put him in Kipa. Achil also sorim, they feed him barley, actually take grace in Ufkas, right? It was this grotesque, right? It was really like a death penalty. Kipa is a fascinating idea. It's not really imprisonment as much as something else that they would, right? But after 2, that's it. But vestos, Tatan Ena Isha, top of Samachem and Aleph, Koves La Veses, Asha Tikvei Shalosh Pamim, right? So the day of her Veses, of her period, is established only after 3 times that happens. And we don't we're no longer concerned with that Veses only after 3 times that she doesn't get a period on that day. Shor Muad. It's not in a Shor Nasa Muad, a bull doesn't become a Muad until testify against him 3 times that it's a menace, that it's injuring others. Tanur Rabbanan. Let's go a little further. We're a little bit behind. So we have some time. Let's go a little further. Tanur Rabbanan. The rabbis taught in a brisa. Nises Larishon. If a man was married to a first husband, loyal abanim, and had no children with him, Lasheni. He's married to a second husband, loyal abanim, and has no children after 10 years. Lashlish Lutinase. Not allowed to get married a 3rd time. El Mishish Lobanim. She only can marry someone who's already fulfilled the mitzvah of plural. Right? If she marries a 3rd time to someone who hasn't had children, and then he finds out about it, Tetzi lo ksuba, or even if he knew about it, she gets divorced and there's no ksuba payment. Right? That was invalid marriage. So the Gemara asks, about 2, 4, 6 lines from the top. If she married a 3rd time after 20 years of royal babanim, and have children with him, are they allowed to? Are the first husbands allowed to? Once it's 3 times already, she never had children. We're suggesting that it's clear that it's her fault. It's her problem. If it's her problem, maybe the first 2 husbands can get their ksuba back. So mimas omrilei. Can they say to her, now that you've been married 30 years to 3 different men, it's clear that the problem is with you, and we want you have to refund the ksuba. Or maybe she can say to them, Hashdu di kachashi. No, the problem in the first 20 years was with you, and now in the 21 through 30th years, the problem is with me, right? But I was entitled to my ksuba payment then. And the problem is just now. So Mistabra, the Gemara answers, Matzis Amar Lahu, it seems like she can say, Hashtu de Kachashi. Right? You can't prove that the problem was with me back then. And it's too late now, and I already got my ksuba, and so, sorry, Charlie. Okay, Iboy Lahu. Nisis Lervi, if she's married to a 4th husband, and they have children, can she then say, the 3rd husband owes me a ksuba? Amrin Allah, we say to her, it's better for you to be quiet than to say something. Because if she wants her ksuba from the 3rd husband, the 3rd husband can say to her, had I known that you could have children, I would not have divorced you. And that could invalidate the 3rd divorce and make this 4th marriage illegitimate, and the child that emerges a mamzer. So be quiet. Is that true? Mascular papa, can that really work? Shaska, even if she's silent. Ana mishaskinan, shall we remain silent? Right? The husband truly divorced her on false pretenses, needs to get batal. When I'm zera, right? So what difference does it make if she makes the claim or not? That's really a concern, right? Do we really want to go down that road? Right? No, we don't go down that road. We don't want to look at a get and say, had the husband known something, you would have given the get. No, leave it alone. And the reason why, and in fact, she was infertile when he divorced her, and that was a legitimate divorce. And only now she was healed. Just like before, we said only now she became infertile. Now the other way, right? So we don't want to go down. We don't want to go down a road where we suggest that a get can become batal, invalidating the subsequent marriage and making mamzerim out of the children. Okay, I think we will. No, let's go to the Mishnah on Samach Hayom a little bit further. Right, so if a man claims that the fact that they didn't have children in the marriage is due to her infertility, it's possible that he could get out of paying the ksuba. Hu amar mina. He says that the fact that they didn't have children was her fault. V'hi amar mineh. She says that's because of him, right? But they didn't have fertility clinics back then. So how did you decipher this? Amar Rabbi Ami said, Devarim shebeinu levinah. Private matters between him and her, and Amena, she's believed. She gets her ksuba. Time of my, why is that? He kaimala biyora b'chetz. Right? Hu lo kimle biyora b'chetz. Right? So, sort of, if we're going to determine fertility by the motility of the sperm, she's in a position to evaluate that due to their intimate contact, more so than he is. That's what the Gemara says. Amar Yehu, if the husband says, Izil insim itza, I will go and take a second wife, Yivduk nafshai, and to see whether or not it's right, get a second opinion as to the motility of his sperm and therefore his fertility. So does she have to agree to allow for the second marriage while he's married to her? Am Rabbi Ami, af bezu, yotze v'ting ksuba. In this case also, we say that he must divorce her immediately and give her the ksuba. But the whole reason why he's doing that is so that he can avoid paying the ksuba. We don't want to go down that road. Shani Omer, we want to protect the woman. Shani Omer, kol nosi ish al ishto. Whoever marries a woman, a second wife, after already having a first wife again, without the consent of the first wife, yotze v'ting ksuba. So it doesn't matter anymore whether he's fertile, whether she's infertile, he's infertile. He's marrying a second wife without the consent of the first wife. That itself is grounds for the payment of the ksuba. Rava says, no say adam kamen ashim al ishto. Rava says, no, a woman does not have veto, does not have to agree for a man to marry additional wives. Who islay limizanai ninu. So long as she's taken care of, so long as her needs are taken care of financially, right? She has what to eat, etc. What about this case? Hu amar ipalta begoyase. He says you miscarried at some point during the 10 years, and therefore the 10-year time has not elapsed yet, and I don't have to divorce you yet. The Amra Loa pleads, and she says, no, I never had a miscarriage. Oh, Rabbi Ami, right? So in all of these matters, she's believed. Dimisa dipila, for if it's true that she had miscarriage, nafsha bakarto machaska. She would not want to hide this, because if she hides this, she's more likely to be an akara, right? If she had a miscarriage, then at least she's fertile. So she would not lie about the fact that she has not miscarried. She'd rather have miscarried so that she's not an akara. So we believe her. Ipila, a woman who had a miscarriage, a chazar ipila, and she had another miscarriage, a chazar ipila, and had another third miscarriage. Hochsagal nefilim is a chazaka of nefilim, and the husband can divorce her. Maybe. has to divorce her, can divorce her, it's grounds for divorce. Huamar apila trey, he says, you miscarried twice, and therefore I don't have to divorce you. Yamar Tlas, and she says, no, it's been 3 times. Amr Yitzchak Balazar, Udavi Ben Midrasha, Yitzchak says this actually happened. Amru Himahemna, and they say she's believed again. He means the Apla, for if she had not miscarried a 3rd time, Nafsha Benipli Lo Makaska. Right? You don't lie about that. You don't want to become a hook-suck benephilim. So obviously, if she said that it happened, we believe her on these matters. Now, again, this last halacha would have to be understood in light of the technologies that we have, reproductive technologies, fertility treatments that could aid a husband and wife in bringing forth children, even after difficulties at the beginning, once they have some medical technological intervention. So that halacha may not be so applicable given the current technological resources and availability that we have. All right, we went from Mishnah to Mishnah, Yashar Kalach. We'll pick up on the Mishnah on Samach Hey Amid Beis next time. Have a great day.